am compelled by Schlock.
Well, it is time to hone your schlockokinesis. I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous. Chris, I feel like it's been a couple fortnights since we've actually officially done this.
It's been a while. Before Christmas.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I've seen you personally since then, but not on the show.
Not officially. It doesn't happen here. Does it happen?
So we've basically gone viral with the Christmas wrap. We got a lot of thumbs up, a lot of thumbs down.
As any good Christmas wrap will give you.
There's no such thing as bad news, I think is what they say in the biz.
Right.
So we are coming out in the new year swinging.
Yeah.
With I don't know. It might be the cult classic. I know that this movie was in infamy for a long time. 1976's Carrie.
They're all gonna laugh at you.
They're all gonna laugh at you. Yeah, I mean, so many great lines in this movie. So many great things, cultural, mimetic things to come out of this movie. So we're gonna probably get into it real quick. It costs $1.8 million to create, and it pulled in a whopping $33.8 million. So definite success. For those of you who don't know, this was based off of a Stephen King novel called Carrie. It was his first novel and also his first movie. It's so weird. So many of Stephen King's books have been turned into movies. I consider him in some way like a movie person. He's in the world of movies, even though he's just a writer.
Right. It's also he captured such a piece of the pie and such a zeitgeisty thing that it's hard to think that 76, early 70s was his first stuff.
Yeah. He's been at it a long time.
Our whole lives, obviously, but but it feels like it should be longer with as influential as he is in the world of horror and other genre pieces. And
I think it's a little interesting that his very first book is about a bullied menstruating girl. Write what you know. You know what I mean? So this movie it's been out a long time. There's been all sorts of commentary on it. I don't know if we can really say anything that hasn't been said. It's got everything in it has a story. It's got its own lore. They say that Carrie Fisher, she was going to play Carrie,
supposedly,
and Sissy Spacek was going to play Princess Leia, but Carrie Fisher didn't want to do the nudity, so they swapped. And of course it's not true, according to Carrie Fisher. Steven Spielberg apparently, young man hung around on set trying to pick up ladies, and that's where he met his first wife. He asked every girl on set out, and they all turned him down but one. There is just a lot in this movie. Hopefully we can bring you something maybe a little different perspective.
All we have to offer are our takes on it, which if you're watching the show, hopefully you find them somewhat interesting, and if not, it's we're not making any bones about what we're doing here. It's just two dudes talking about cool movies, man.
Come hang out with us. Grab a Busch Light, sit down in your favorite easy chair, watch some high school girls getting bullied. That's what we're all about.
You were channeling the narrator from Smash right there from Offspring. Your favorite easy chair.
Well, you can tell when I grew up. So one other thing, while we're kind of in our intro section here, I do think it's interesting. One of the things I love to kind of keep track of are eras of horror film, like what was going on when, and what sort of that zeitgeist of horror was, like what people found scary, right, and certain periods of time. And Carrie really kicked off the telekinesis psychic.
There were a lot of telekinetic psychic stuff, and then Jaws, and they never combined them, Jaws, unfortunately. Yeah,
if that hasn't been done, it's got to be done.
One thing that Carrie has up on all the other movies for being scary is that it rhymes.
Scary Carrie.
Yeah.
Perfect. I do have a list I want to read off really quick.
Let me see if I can get any. The Dead Zone.
Dead Zone. These are psychic telekinetic movies.
Firestarter.
You're naming all the ones that Stephen King wrote. Right? Did he do Firestarter?
I think so. Yeah. Man. Okay, I'm done. My mind's blank.
So we got the Fury, the Sender, Firestarter, Scanners, the Medusa Touch, Ruby, Jennifer, Patrick, the Dead Zone, the Curlian Witness. Never heard of that. Zapped, Modern Problems, and one that I didn't see on this list, Tourist Trap, which you and I have talked about before. I think we need to do for this show.
Yeah.
And because when I watched Tourist Trap, it had the psychic stuff in it, the telekinesis stuff, and I was trying to describe it to you, and I was like, it's very like slasher, Stephen King, psychic stuff.
I'm like, that's telekinesis, Darby.
That's telekinesis, baby. So anyway, I know we want to get into the schlock, so be warned, we are going to spoil this movie. We're going to spoil everything for you. But settle in. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you're watching our shorts. We got shorts now. Short videos. So check those out. Web of Schlock.
Web of Schlock. Okay. This is going to be quick because, like you said, everyone knows about Carrie. So obviously they know the actors. Great to see John Travolta in an early role. We can pull up a picture of him. And then I think also in this picture is Nancy Allen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we got to give a shout out to her for her work in the RoboCop franchise.
Yeah. Murphy.
It took me forever to realize who she was. And then I'm like, oh, man. Also, I like seeing John Travolta in Cars, probably because of Pulp Fiction, but that's just a good look for him. So
Grease?
Yeah, Grease.
This is pre-Grease.
Travolta in Cars, man. That's Piper Laurie. She played the mother. She was a teacher in the faculty. I mean, Sissy Spacek. Okay, you wanted to give a shout out to Eddie McClurg, which is an awesome name.
We don't have a picture of her. You're going to have to look her up. And when you look her up, you'll definitely recognize her.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Yeah, just great little bit actors. A lot of youthful people that went on to do a lot of really cool things. But the one I want to talk about is the director, Brian De Palma.
Mm-hmm.
I love this director. He is such a great director. And he's done the gamut of like schlocky stuff and prestige stuff, and then really cool thrillers. And Dress to Kill, Scarface, The Untouchables, the first Mission Impossible. He has a very unique visual style, which is really cool. It's cool to see that, and it's cool to see an earlier film where you can see like certain things that he does developing, and where he's trying them out for the first time, or maybe not the first time. He did several films before this, but it feels like someone who has an actual vision. And
I'm not as versed, but did you see some of that in Carrie? The development of his style. I mean, what a broad range.
Yes, yeah, I saw. I mean, that was. Let's just delve right into the good. The directing, I loved it. But I'm a huge De Palma fan. and there was lots of things in here that just felt really cool. Other things I really liked, there was a dreamlike quality to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Especially with that opening scene where it goes slow-mo and then you have that weird piano that's this comes off as negative. What's coming to mind is like soap opera-y,
Yeah.
but I don't mean it in a negative way. It feels like haunting and like narration over at the beginning of a book or something, just taking you into this world.
Well, and later it has like all those soft white edges on the frame and everything. It looks like a dream.
The lighting, the candles. There's that shot toward the end where they're dancing and like the camera's swirling the opposite way as them and all the lights are blurring and like just tons of like fun things.
I got sick during that part.
Yeah, well, as well you should.
Yeah, it's on purpose.
Yep. So again, most of my other good, it ties into schlock and bad and everything. So I'm going to get through it and we'll talk about it all later.
No, do you have bad?
I do have a bad.
Hit me.
I have two bad. I think the structure of the story could have been a little tighter. I don't think it's bad. I just think it could have been short up a little, especially like the order of Act 3. I'm not sure. I didn't dislike it. I liked it, but part of me feels like it could have been done better.
I remembered it. I remembered it in a different order, and I think you're hitting on something. Like it should have been in a different order to flow better.
I feel that you should have reordered the climax because the prom feels like such a huge climax, and I know the fight with the mother is important and thematic, but it feels kind of anticlimactic because of the huge set piece that is the prom sequence. And then, so I was raving about De Palma and I was gushing about all his like directorial little fun things. It feels like he's trying stuff out in this movie, and some of it I really like. In fact, the split screen, which we'll have a picture later, we'll come back to it and talk about it. I love it. But in fact, the original prom sequence was almost all split screen, and he didn't like it and re-edited it to what it is now, with just a little bit of split screen. So even he was like trying things and then realizing, wait, that's too far. So
it's like John Woo. Is that who did the Hulk, the first Hulk movie?
No, that was Ong Lee. Ong Lee. Ong Lee, yeah. He did the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
That's right.
Yes. But okay, so here's my other bad. There was too much split diopter, where you have the two different planes in focus and then that weird line in the middle that's out of focus. Like when they're reading the poem in school and you see him in focus and you see her in focus and then you see that line down the center. It's a cool device. It's a cool tool to use. But like there was a lot of it in this film. And it kind of took me out of it. And then the other thing, which we'll get into, my last bad is more in schlock. So that's it for me. What do you got? So
my good, as far as good and bad goes, I just have like a really different way of looking at this movie. I think it's been really hard for me to divide it up in my mind between good and bad, but I'll try my hardest. Good, the music. I really did like the music in it. I didn't like, it's not music I would listen to on my own, like the flute and things and that, but I think it worked very, very well for the atmosphere that it was creating. The strings in it, like they made me laugh. Like that made me laugh every time.
I think some of those were lifted from Psycho.
Yep, they were lifted from Psycho, which I think is another interesting part. Like it kind of shows how Psycho was already at that time a classic.
And Bernard Herrmann was supposed to do the score to this, I believe, but passed away. Well, before he could. But anyways.
So there's that. And then when they go to the prom, there's a great song playing called Education Blues by Vance or Towers. Really good song. It sounds like a modern song to me. I was like, I could hear this on the radio today.
Yeah.
So I thought the music was great. It's obviously a very innovative movie. You talked about the spinning, like it made me sick, but it was to sort of build that tension. I think like it was very purposeful. Also, so the stinger at the end, the ending of it, where Sue, I believe her name is, she's in I believe it's a dream sequence where she goes down to the crater where Carrie's house was, and has the for sale sign, and it's a cross. She kneels in front of it, and the bloody hand of Carrie comes up and grabs her. Now, when I first saw this, I was probably like in junior high, and I saw the TV version, and I just saw this ending part, and that was it. I thought it said Barry White burn in hell. It went by so fast. I had no context for it, but I thought the ending, I was like, whoa, this movie is as intense as they say. It is as crazy as they say. And apparently this was like the first horror movie stinger, at least the first big one.
Really? That's interesting.
So they have the final scare, in movies like they have in Rosemary's Baby, where you get your final scare, but the actual stinger where it's like,
Yep. Nice.
I think it got more popularized with the first Friday the 13th, where Jason jumps out of the boat or into the boat at the water. End. Yeah. But this is like the first 5-minute freak out, I think is what some people call it. So very innovative. As far as bad goes, it's just so weird because the way I look at this movie is like, to me, it's like looking at an artifact. Like, and so it's hard for me to say what's bad about it. Like there are plenty of things that you could pick apart, but like
it's such a cultural icon that did so much that it's hard to pull things apart from each other.
Yeah, if I was looking at an ancient Greek vase, right, I wouldn't like go, oh, they messed that up. That's so bad. I would just like take it in as a whole and examine it like for the cultural artifact.
That's interesting that there are certain movies that either have been so popular or old enough that have that almost artifact quality. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So, there's just some odd stuff in it. Like I could point out, they have some bad theology in it, but that's on purpose, right? She is totally twisted scripture and her interpretations of it. It's kind of slow in parts. The whole spinning thing, like I said, it made me sick, but like all this stuff is very purposeful in a way. And so a lot of it, I think, comes down to taste.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But to move into the schlock, I will say something that is almost solidly bad for me, but I'm still on the fence about it. And I'm more towards bad, but I'd like to discuss it. The nudity in it, the opening scene.
We get a fight. Yes.
I think was, I think it's pretty infamous. Like, I think that is one of the things that like sort of set off the movie, right, to be this cultural classic. And so my problem with it is that I feel like it's exploitative, and the reason is because they filmed an alternative version of it so that they could show it on TV, where the girls all have like towels on, like it's strategically placed. There's a girl that like walks out of the mist of the shower, and so she's very heavily obscured. And so I watched that and I'm like, okay, does it take away anything from this narrative?
I think it does.
To be clothed in some way. And so playing devil's advocate for myself, I think that there is a part of there's something about vulnerability there.
That's exactly it.
And how these other girls, they're vulnerable and comfortable, whereas Carrie is vulnerable and isolated And I mean, I do think the opening scene is very good. Like, what a traumatic experience. Like, you think that you're like dying.
Yeah.
And people are just like laughing at you. So yeah, I do think it has a purpose. I still obviously lean towards bad because, and this is why, because the majority of the women in that, young girls in that scene who were naked, they didn't want to do it. They were hesitant about it. But then once they saw that Sissy Spacek did it, they felt more confident doing it. And so they went ahead and did it. But their initial feeling to do it is that, no, this might not be good. And then they sort of go and do it instead. Like, I think that's odd.
I'll play devil's advocate a little more. Yeah, I think there's no point for gratuitous nudity. And I think you can shoot scenes that are similar, but you're citing the made for TV version, which is just good business because they knew they couldn't show that scene, and that's a pivotal scene. But I guarantee that same made for TV cut back on a ton of the violence, and this is a horror movie, so you can't tell me that it was just as effective with a lot of the gore and violence cut out and the whole movie shored up than it would be seeing the director's original intent that was in the theater. So I think that they cut out language and nudity and violence to put any movie on TV, and some suffer less than others. But unless it's truly exploitative, I think the film suffers for it on any of those levels. Now, I think why this isn't gratuitous nudity in the beginning scene here is that verisimilitude. This is a locker room where there would be nudity. B, vulnerability. I think that this endears us to Carrie's character like that. We're seeing her in a vulnerable spot to begin with, and then with what happens and her thinking she's dying and then getting ridiculed and mocked and beat. And it feels very martyr-esque, which, you look back at like some of the martyrs and you have nudity, you have violence, you have humiliation, you have like, I think to take away any of those things would be to lessen the effect, and it really sets the tone for the movie. So yeah, that's why I think that it's appropriate there. A lot of times I'm on your page and thinking, well, we didn't need that,
Well, like I said, I'm semi on the fence. I personally would never feel comfortable like trying to coax an actress into nudity and be like, no, it's okay. Like, to me, that seems weird.
I agree. That does seem weird.
That's apart from the art of it. I think that's where it starts to get odd.
I agree. But there's a common ground we can meet on.
The verisimilitude part, I semi agree with, but I don't know. I have a hard part. Have a hard time believing in verisimilitude when we're talking about telekinesis. People say it for Game of Thrones, but there's dragons. Like, oh, it makes it more real when when the things are flying around in the air and the high school is burning from the brain. It makes it more real. But I do appreciate the vulnerability, and there is a place for that in art. And you brought up martyrs.
Good segue.
And we get some interesting martyrdom scenes mixed with sexuality as well. We have the mother, Mrs. White, I forget her name, Margaret White. So they're venerating a statue of Saint Sebastian. And I just found this odd. because I'm not Catholic, so I don't know very well. But as far as I know, he's not like the patron saint of telekinesis or the bullied or anything like that. Like I was trying to find like maybe a deeper connection there, but I couldn't. So I was almost going to put this in bad. But I do like that they're at least attempting to connect some things here, because later when she kills her mother, she is in like a similar pose to the Saint Sebastian. Again, like I don't know why. I don't know why that happened.
I wonder if this is a little of putting the cart before the horse. I almost wonder if they had this death scene written in, and then they saw that like what saint could they have in there, and they're like, oh, this one has wounds that are similar with arrows. Yeah. Let's put that one in. Like I wonder if it was like
they just couldn't crucify her, right? They couldn't telekinetically crucify her, so they had to find something else. But so while she's getting pierced with the knives, she is moaning rather orgasmically. And there's a deep connection between sex and it being like sinful and
death and religion, and then just in general, but also heavily in this film. Like it feels like she turned away from sex and embraced religion, the mother.
And so there's like some sort of sexual ecstasy in pain and martyrdom. Mortification is her sexual activity. And interestingly enough, looking at some stuff for Saint Sebastian, apparently he's somewhat tied to like the homosexual community, because artists enjoyed painting like a young,
there are some
partially
beautiful,
naked man.
Beautiful paintings throughout history of Sebastian.
So there is some sort of like sexual ideas conjoined with that imagery. So does it go beyond that for the overall movie and who Carrie is? I don't know. I think that they were like tapping at it, but they didn't quite break through on it.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yes. Yep. Trying to think of some schlocky things. The mother's over the top acting, which was really good, but you can't deny that it was over the top. Especially when she's cutting the carrots. Like, man, that's hilarious.
Just so crazy.
There are so many cool little things though that I love in this film. The little touches, like no, here we go. And do you have the same wet mouth there, Darby?
Nope, it's all in my beard.
Did you want to talk about this?
Well, you were talking about the mother.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up a big question of, is this a black comedy? Is it dark comedy? Because apparently the actress played the mother believed that she was in a comedy because the character was so ridiculous. She like couldn't believe that this would be a serious film. And then we get John Travolta and what's the main bully girl's name? We get the two of them.
Chris,
yeah, like, and they thought that they were the comic relief for the movie because they were so ridiculous. And I mean, look at him. He every time he drinks beer, it's just all over his face. His mouth is just so wet all the time. And they're just ridiculous. I
mean, I think a lot of horror movies are borderline dark comedy.
Well, and you had another screenshot where they're like in the tuxedo shop and it like speeds up.
This is my biggest problem with the movie. It's not a problem. It's a puzzle for me. So the tone of this montage is bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most effective things in this film is you questioning, because I hadn't seen this for like 20 plus years. So the key moments I remembered, some of the dialogue I remembered, but lots of it I didn't remember. The thing that mattered to me most was, did Tommy know? Was Tommy in on it?
Yeah.
And toward
we
the
don't
end,
get a lot for him.
yeah, I don't think Tommy was in on it because he when he looked up to see the bucket falling and all that, he was just as confused.
Yeah,
I think he really thought that he was doing a nice thing.
I think that he is actually just he's supposed to be like an oblivious jock.
Yes.
I think he's actually supposed to be like kind of dumb.
But you don't know watching the whole film until the end if he's aware or not. And so there's that thing in the back of your head that's like, if he's in on this, he is like one of the darkest characters I've ever seen.
Right.
And then I start to think like, whose side is the camera on? There's so many weird things that it shows that like are from different characters' points of view that it starts to feel
it's hard
voyeuristic
to tell
or exploitative. But in that montage, the tone of it is like a rom-com. It's like a teenage, it's like a late 90s American Pie fun teenage movie. Like, hey, let's get ready for prom. And then
he has the tuxedo shirt. Like, bleh.
Yep. But my biggest problem is that they fast forward the dialogue. That is just the most bizarre choice to me that just took me out of the film for the rest of the film because I kept dwelling on it. So you can do split screen, you can do all these weird shots, you can do all these things, and it still feels like you're in the movie proper. But
if it was a comedy, it would make a lot more sense.
Yes, but the you're right. But the thing I'm thinking about, did you ever see oh man, my mind is blank. Give me 2 seconds. It was a horror movie in the 2000s about two kids who took people hostage at a house, and they had a remote control.
I have no idea what you're talking about. They had
Funny
remote
Games.
Control.
Funny Games. Did you
Oh
ever
no,
see
I
Funny Games?
never saw that.
Okay, so it's this really dark.
Like that was
movie.
the vaguest description.
I'm like, oh, so Funny Games, and it was a remake of a movie, but this, so it's a home invasion. These two sociopath, teenager, early 20 people break into a house with a family, and they torture them and hurt them and do all sorts of messed up things. And then like 2/3 of the way into the film, and I haven't seen it forever, so it could be earlier, it could be later, but it's a ways into the film. One of them grabs the TV remote control and rewinds the movie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So spoiler alert, but it takes you out of it. It's like Rubber. Did you ever see Rubber?
Mm-hmm.
So the fast forwarding is such a meta device that it feels like this is a movie about a movie as opposed to just a story.
Right. I think the reason it was in there, like the literal reason it was in there was because they wanted to get to that punchline of the shirt tuxedo, but they didn't want to take the time to get there, so they just sped it up. You're
100% correct. That's why. But just because you do something for a certain reason doesn't mean that it doesn't have rippling effects about the movie.
Right. I think split screen and things like that, like I think it fits with the split screen. I don't know. It didn't take me out of the movie. I was just like, it's a comedy
choice. Yeah. So maybe with the idea that it's a comedy, you're right. Go ahead.
And to further my point that it is a comedy, I'd like to bring up the picture of Freddie and Norma. These characters, Freddie, my favorite character. Unfortunately, he was a bully and perished at the hands of Carrie. But he's the guy that we first see him. He tosses John Travolta the beer. He has a great line when they're going to get the pig's blood, and they have all the paintings of the pigs, and he's like, yeah, I have some girlfriends that pose for this. And when he gets on the prom committee, they're like, oh, you're a little late to be on the prom committee. And he's like, nope, I'm right on time, buddy.
Yeah. Oh, and I love that scene. He's like, well, could you show up at 6:30? No, I'm going to show up at 8. That'll be just fine.
He was great. And then we have this girl, Norma, with the red hat that she wears through the entire thing. She looks like Mario. She wears the red hat with her prom dress. She wears it when she's in gym class, and she gets to wear red shorts. No one else has red shorts. Like that is a comedy character, right? That's like
Yeah,
Ernest.
she feels like something out of Peanuts. Like she should be part of Charlie Brown's group.
Like, is it in one of Ernest's movies, or is it in a Pee Wee Herman movie where he like goes and opens his closet and it's like all the same clothes?
I think it's probably both.
Like it's that character, right? And that character only exists in a comedy. So
the other thing that's really interesting, especially about movies in the 70s, and we're running late, but there's no reason not to go a little over.
Hey, it's Carrie.
It's Carrie. The thing about movies in the 70s, and probably before the 70s and some afterwards, but it really feels like there was a melding of genre that like almost on a scene by scene basis.
Mm-hmm.
Like here's a horror scene, and here's a comedy scene, and here's a romantic scene, and they didn't try and like mesh them together into one scene. They just showed you one after the other, which had a really interesting tonal shift that would be jarring if they only did it once or twice. But when that's how your movie goes, it just creates a strange genre tonal rhythm to it that you don't see a lot anymore, because now you got to have the scary and the comedic and the romantic all in the same scene, all fused together. Like it's yeah, so it's just it's interesting in this movie, and I've seen it in other movies around this time.
I think the 70s, and people probably disagree with me, but I think the 70s was like the perfection of filmmaking. Not that they made the absolute best movies ever made, but I think it's when filmmaking as an art form really became an art form. Like prior to that, we were like establishing genre, we were establishing shots, we were establishing like how to put movies together, how to put narratives together. But then in the 70s, when you get like your Arturs, you get your Stanley Kubricks and whatnot, like they start putting film together in a way that's like both experimental, but also like it has some more knowledge behind it. And so we get like these really interesting cultural artifacts from the 70s. Like you can just tell a 70s movie. They're very interesting.
Yeah, there are a lot of great 70s movies that are interesting. I think part of that, you're mainly talking about American cinema. Yeah. And I think part of that is that other countries kind of had this renaissance and like culmination of film as art earlier in decades prior. I'm thinking of like Ingmar Bergman and like the 40s, 50s, 60s, and Godard in the 60s, and Kurosawa, and like so there were decades where other countries were making these auteur like vehicles that like had genre and had fun stories for people, but also had all this art and they were saying something and they tried different things. And I think a lot of these American directors that were coming up in the 70s were really feasting on the American cinema and the classic storytelling, the Western and the comedy and all that. And they were getting influenced by all these really, really great films from foreign cinema. And it felt like this was like a coming together, and there are great movies in every decade, and there are people constantly making progress and trying new things, but yeah, I really felt like this was a special moment.
Yeah,
and this was definitely a movie in that moment. Do you have anything else?
I have one last picture I want to show about the inner city. My dog is barking. There must be intruders. Picture of the inner city is what I call it, because I'm trying to figure out what school is this and where are these high school students at? They're graffitiing the place all the time, right? We had that previous picture of Carrie White Burns in Hell. Like, what is this place where people are so nasty to each other? Like you would expect to see graffiti on the school in inner cities. I don't know. I thought it was weird.
Yeah,
Any thoughts on that?
I guess I don't know what high school was like in the 70s, so I can't comment as if this was more of a normal thing. Like bullying was a lot more prevalent then, right? I mean, drugs. I mean, everything changes with each generation and each decade and different things. So it feels strange to me right now. I agree with you, but maybe that was more of a normal thing, even in a small town.
Back to the bullying and the nudity portion. So one of the reasons why it doesn't ring true to me is because I've really never been naked in a locker room in school, and most people our age and younger haven't. And I wonder if that is because of Carrie, right? Because it showed this is how traumatic and this is how much this sucks. And so schools really stop tightening their grip on you have to be naked in front of each other in gym class. Right.
And, so again, that's that change and that product of its time. It's I can't comment. Maybe it feels very authentic to me, but that's just the vibe I get. I don't have a time machine to go to high school in the 70s.
Yeah. Well, so if you're watching and you were in high school in the 70s, please comment and tell us what it was like.
Did this happen to you? Do you have telekinetic powers?
How much peen or bearded ladies did you see? So I think we're running out of time. We have a couple announcements to make. One is that this coming Friday is Friday the 13th, and Chris, you will be in my neck of the woods.
So we'll do something special to be determined. So yes, so be on the lookout on that. Subscribe if you want to. If you want to find out what's going on. And then what is the movie in a fortnight?
So our next Fortnite movie it's another John Travolta vehicle that you love and I love and everybody loves. That's not true. Only me. Only I love it. Battlefield Earth.
Oh my God.
Very schlocky movie. Going from horror into science fiction. I love this movie, and I'm going to convince the world why they should love it.
I think we're having a Warriors of Virtue next in 2 weeks.
So make sure you check that out. Check out our other videos. Like, comment, subscribe. I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous, and we have been compelled by Schlock. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye, guys. I am compelled by Schlock. Compelled by Schlock. Compelled by Schlock. Wait, no.